So now that we followed our pre-flight checklist, we're pretty much ready to taxi into position to take off and fly. Since we're at an RC flying field in this case, we have a runway, so that dictates the area that we take off from. We're also going to take off into the wind. There's just a little bit of wind, like we talked about before. You do want to avoid flying in the wind if at all possible. If you can't, you definitely have to take off into and land into the wind. So in this case, the wind's pretty much from right to left down the runway, which is perfect. So I'm going to taxi out into position so I can take off from left to right. So real quick, couple notes. We're going to make sure that this is our first flight, your first flight. You need to stay in the beginner flight mode this entire flight. Your takeoff, you're flying around, you're landing in the beginner mode. It's much easier in that mode than it is in the other modes. You'll do a couple flights in the beginner mode, then you'll move into the intermediate mode, which will be our next video. But be sure to have that switch in the 0 position all the way back, the B switch here on the DXS transmitter. I also have throttle cut on right now. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to taxi into position by using the left-hand stick. This is our throttle, and our rudder and our nose steering is here. So left is left, right is right. There's 2 different ways to taxi. You don't have to worry about the right stick right now. That's more for advanced taxiing. But for now, you can throttle up just a little bit until it starts to move, and then you can steer. Sometimes that works well for some people. That might be a bit much for others. So a lot of times I recommend is just blip the throttle a little bit. Not too much. You don't need a lot, but just blip the throttle. Doesn't move quite as fast, quite as consistently. It allows you some time to react to your steering. Now, every once in a while, like here, there's some rocks on the runway that's kind of bouncing the nose around. So it's dictating that I have to drive it a little bit more and steer it a little bit more than I might on a smoother, cleaner surface. In this case, on the runway, they've got lines painted in the center line, on the center line. So I'm going to line up on those. So that I've got the nose lined up on the center line of the runway, which is directly into the wind, I'm going to take off by slowly advancing the throttle. I am not going to touch the right-hand stick because in the beginner mode, when I go above about 2/3, 3/4 throttle, it adds up elevator to climb. So as long as I slowly advance the throttle, steer with that left-hand stick to keep it straight down the runway, it's harder than it seems. But when I do that, I'm just going to focus on that until I get to about 3/4 throttle. And really, when I get to full throttle, the airplane should lift off and climb on its own. And we're going to let it climb for a little bit, and then we're going to use the right-hand stick to control it once it gets into the air. So let's start with that takeoff. Slowly advancing the throttle, steering to keep the nose straight down the runway. Advancing, advancing. Now you can see I'm at full power and it climbs all by itself. And I'm going to let it gain, about 100 feet, 200 feet altitude. Now I'm going to use the right-hand stick to turn left. I'm going to go all the way to the left. I'm going away from the pits. If you're at a flying field, that's very important. I'm going to let go of the stick. Now before it climbs too high, I'm going to throttle back to about 2/3 power. At about 2/3 power, the airplane will more or less maintain its altitude. If it's climbing too much, you can also throttle back a little more. If you want it to climb more, you can throttle up more. Basically, we want it to be high enough that we're safe, but not so high that it's impossible to see. Now, this is where it gets easier to fly in the beginner mode than other modes because I can just hold the stick all the way to the left, and the airplane just makes a nice left-hand turn all by itself. It doesn't get upside down. I can just keep doing a left-hand circuit, and if I pull back on the stick to add a little bit of up elevator, now it actually makes the turn a little bit tighter and it keeps it from losing altitude. Normally when you turn, you lose altitude. If you add that up elevator, it helps reduce that from happening or prevent that from happening. You can even climb depending on how much elevator and how much throttle you have. I'm gonna let it fly down a little more to the right, and I'm gonna make a 180-degree turn to the left. Again, I'm holding the stick all the way to the left. I'm pulling back a little bit of elevator to maintain my altitude. When it's flying straight back the other way opposite of the way that I took off, I'm gonna let go of the stick. That's the self-leveling that we've talked about. So when you have the stick in the neutral position, the airplane just stays level. Now when it goes a little further to the left, I'm going to hold all the way over to the left to make another 180-degree left-hand turn. I'm going to pull back on the stick until it's going down the runway, and I'm going to let go for the self-leveling again. One important thing here, a lot of times people start to turn, then they change their mind, then they change their mind, and then the airplane flies away. It's very important that when you want to make a turn, you stay in that turn until you're going the direction that you really want to go. Again, don't change your mind halfway through and then go the other way, and then change your mind and go the other way, because the next thing you know, the airplane gets so far away you can't even see it, and then maybe you lose it altogether. So for now, when you're in your first flight, the most important thing to do is just get used to keeping the airplane in front of you. You don't want to fly around you, behind you, beside you. You really want to fly in front of you, especially if you're flying in a flying field where you have a flying space. Gain a little bit of altitude there, so I'm going to throttle back some more. make another 180-degree turn. And basically right now we're doing what they call a racetrack pattern. So I'm flying along with the runway from left to right. When I get a little further down to the right, I'm gonna make a left-hand turn all the way 180 degrees until it's going opposite of the runway, the direction that we took off of the runway. And then I'm gonna let go. With that self-leveling, it makes it nice and easy and goes level. And you can do this for a few minutes just to get used to it. If you're ready and you feel comfortable enough, you can also potentially do a figure eight. So for example, I'm gonna go left-hand turn all the way, but instead of stopping in line with the runway like I took off, I'm gonna keep going till I'm 45 degrees across it. Then I'm gonna let go. I'm gonna let it fly at a diagonal. And then I'm going to make a right-hand turn. Now I'm going to complete this end of the figure eight. So I'm gonna make a right-hand turn, pull back a little bit on the stick, keep my nose up till I'm going 45 degrees to get angled off the runway. I'm gonna let go and let it self-level again. And now I'm going to complete that figure eight with another left-hand turn over here. Till I'm diagonal again, and I'm gonna let go. And I will tell you that some people struggle with turning right because you have to pull the stick to your right. Some people struggle turning to their left. Everyone's a little different. If you get confused, don't worry. Just make turns in one direction for your first flight or first couple of flights. There's nothing wrong with that. But so you can see here, I could also do the racetrack pattern with right-hand turns instead of left-hand turns. There's nothing wrong with that other than now I'm going downwind, even though I'm over the runway. So that's not necessarily how we want to practice landing, which is what we're going to work on next. But you can see I make the racetrack pattern to the right instead. I'm going to make one more right-hand turn 180 degrees to finish this racetrack pattern. Pull back on the stick a little bit. But now I'm going to go a little bit more of the figure eight because I want to practice landing. We don't want to fly too long into our battery. And on the DXS transmitter, it's great because it's actually got these green LED indicator lights that show us, like right now I've got two lights. It's actually flashing down on the second one. So I have a little less than half my battery power left. Now is a good time to land. I want to practice that racetrack pattern like I was doing. But I want to practice like I'm landing. So now when I'm flying over the runway, I want to reduce the power and let the airplane come down. I don't want to be too high. So I'm going to bring the power down to about half. I'm letting it lose altitude naturally in the turns. Now you can see I'm going downwind. Again, the wind is from right to left. I want to land into it. So now I'm going downwind. I'm letting the airplane come down and reduce the throttle to about a quarter. I'm now going to make another left-hand turn, just like we were making our racetrack patterns in the sky. But this time I'm letting the airplane descend. I'm letting it come down closer to the runway. I'm not turning as tight because now I want to line up with the center of the runway. So now I'm aligned over the center of the runway. I'm still too high to land. I don't want to push forward. Don't do that. A lot of people do that and get into a lot of trouble. I'm letting the airplane naturally descend. I'm going to make another left-hand turn, continuing that racetrack pattern. I'm going to let go of the stick, and you can see I'm at a pretty low altitude now. And at that throttle setting, it's still losing a little bit of altitude. I'm going to give it a little bit more power. I'm losing a little too much altitude. I'm going to make another left-hand turn. I'm going to pull back on the stick so I don't lose too much altitude. I'm going to line up on the center line of the runway, let go of the stick, and I'm going to pull the power completely off. I'm just going to let the airplane land on its own. I'm not going to do anything. Now, you'll see that the airplane bounced. The reason that it bounced is because I did not flare. Flaring is important because it allows you to pull the nose of the airplane up just before it touches down, so that way it lands smoother and easier. I'm going to do a really quick takeoff, and I'm going to go around and do a really quick landing to show you what it looks like when you flare. So again, I've got the nose pointed into the wind. I'm going to advance the throttle to full. It's going to take off like it did before. I'm going to make an immediate left-hand turn and throttle back. This isn't something you should practice. If you're going to practice takeoffs and landings, you really want to take off and go a little higher than what I just did. But I just want to make another quick landing while it's fresh in your mind, how it bounced on the last landing because I let it land on its own, versus now when I flare, just a few feet above the ground, I'm going to pull back on the stick slowly to get the nose up until the main wheels touch down first. All right, I'm throttled off. Make a left-hand turn here at the end of the runway. When it lines up on the center line of the runway, I'm going to let go of the stick, let it come down on its own. Now, it's coming down on its own, which is good. But again, if I don't do anything, it's going to bounce again. So now a few feet off the ground, you see I'm pulling back on the elevator. You can see the nose coming up, and see it didn't bounce as badly that time. And now that it's on the ground, I got to use that left-hand stick to steer. But you'll notice it didn't bounce as bad that time because I touched on the main wheels instead of the nose wheel first. I'm gonna do one more landing, and this time I'm going to flare a little bit lower to the ground so I don't lose as much energy and potentially stall like I almost did there. All right, full throttle, steering with the left hand, let it climb out. I'm gonna make a left-hand turn. So I'm going downwind. I'm gonna throttle back to about now 1/3. Now, learning how much throttle you need and how much altitude you have versus how your turns are gonna be, that's a learning experience. It takes time to get the feel for that. I can tell you that right now, I'm in a good position to make a nice landing pretty much right in front of myself. And that's really where you wanna touch down. You don't wanna touch down too far away from me to the left or too far to the right. So now I'm letting the airplane come down. It's on the center line of the runway. I'm letting it come down. I'm keeping it centered. You can see I'm gonna wait till now. I'm gonna flare, pull back, and see how much smoother that landing was. Okay, I gotta use that left-hand stick to steer. But you see how much smoother that landing was because I actually flared lower to the ground, kept the energy up, kept the nose up until the mains touched. And again, once the airplane touches down, you wanna use that left-hand stick to keep it steering straight on the ground. Now, don't worry, you may end up not reacting fast enough. The airplane turns and goes off the runway. That's okay. Remember, it has oversized tires for a reason. Now I'm going to taxi back. Again, I'm not going to worry about the right-hand stick. I'm going to use the left-hand stick to blip the throttle and steer it back to me. Now we're flying at this club flying field where they want you to taxi inside of this yellow line. So I'm going to come inside of that, taxi it back inside that line, slowly and carefully. I'm going to bring it up to the no taxi line, and then I'm going to refer to my post-flight checklist. So if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out that video next.